7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. Welcome to Rise to Liberty. And I've got a very great friend of mine who's making his second appearance on the show. He's coming back. And Adam, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jacob. How are you?
Not too bad. Just hanging out, trying to stay out of the hot weather, but also still trying to get like enough vitamin D at the same time,
Yeah, I hear you. I was out
So,
earlier today. It's a scorcher today.
yeah, just like it was yesterday. It's just hot,
Yeah.
hot.
Yep.
But so we're getting you back on because you're running for public office, and do you want to let everyone know what you're running for and why you decided to run?
Sure. I'm running for Utah Senate District 7, and I'm running mostly to give people a choice. The incumbent that I'm running against, Stuart Adams, ran 4 years ago, completely unopposed, both the primary and in the general election. And there's a lot of shady stuff, and there's a lot of insider baseball up on Capitol Hill in Salt Lake City. I want to give people a choice, and that is a liberty choice, a choice that's based on individual liberties and individual rights. Someone who's going to prioritize what's going to be best for them rather than what's going to be best for a lot of corporate donors.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, there really is a lot of insider baseball up on Capitol Hill here in Utah. Anyone looking at the title to the episode today, it was a Libertarian run for Republican-controlled Utah, and that's pretty much what it's been. Is just Republican control over one state. We pretty much have a I'm not even sure what you would call that. It's a one-party control here in the state, excluding Salt Lake County, which is very deep blue. And it's what I find interesting about most of everyone up on Capitol Hill is that most of them are all realtors or lenders. I find it very interesting that almost one industry has had the stranglehold on local politics here in the state. And I think that does a lot of damage to our political system here.
No doubt. And the incumbent I'm running against he's definitely part of that cadre, if you will. They've had control for quite a long time. I mean, decades before either of us were even legal adults. They've been kind of running the show. And I think you look at the state of real estate in Utah and like the housing prices and how they just really exploded. And that's benefiting somebody, and it's definitely not your average home buyer.
So, yeah. Even right now, it's more of a buyer's market right now. However, even with that, the prices are still high. And of course, a lot of that has to do with federal interest rates, thanks to the Fed.
Sure.
Who printed trillions of dollars, about $10 trillion in a matter of 2 years. And didn't raise interest rates for a long time, kept them just at zero. And now raising them after we have such a slow job market, rising gas prices, food prices, everything else, and nobody else wants to work.
It's a perfect storm, I think. I mean, you look throughout history, and when have I don't think there's ever been a point whenever really steep inflation has not been followed by a depression or recession. And part of it is because the Federal Reserve comes in and says, "Oh crap, what have we done?" and tries to put the brakes on things and brings the economy to a halt. Now, that's not to say that interest rates shouldn't go up. That's to say interest rates shouldn't be dictated from a central authority like the Fed. They should be allowed to be on the market amongst, many different lenders, and let them find their own natural level of what, because interest rates are really just the cost of capital today. You talk about, time and, the time preference, how much are you willing to pay to have that cash today versus, 10 years from now? That's
Yeah.
that's really what interest rates are. And to have that kind of set by one, like I said, central authority, that's a recipe for disaster, and it has been for over a century now. And we've seen how this plays out with a long history of booms and busts. We're going through this next bust, and I think this is going to be a pretty bad one. It's going to be pretty painful. Again, inflation has come home to roost, as you said. I mean, all the money that they printed, I think something like 80% of the dollars that are in existence were created out of thin air in the last 2 years.
Yep.
That's going to have drastic consequences. I don't think we're not through the woods yet. I think it's going to continue to go up, and I think we're in for a lot of pain while this correction that has to happen goes through.
Yeah, and it's really scary, honestly, because we are at a very interesting time period. Let's see, I was trying to bring something up real quick to bring some sort of light into this for anyone who doesn't know. Let's see here. There it is. So this right here is the M1 money supply from FRED, Fred, the St. Louis Fed. And if you look right here, November 2019, that little incline from 2010 to 2020 ain't that bad, but you go from there, you see that sharp spike.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can even see back in 2007, 2008, whenever we had the big TARP and the bailouts and all that happened, and we had the quantitative, QE1, QE2, QE3, and you can see that it's been going up steeply, but nothing like that wall, that just horizontal wall, or not horizontal, vertical wall that we just hit. And I mean, whenever you have a whole lot more of something, the value of it goes down. You can almost like boil it down to supply and demand. If you have that many dollars, each dollar is going to be worth less in its purchasing power. And it's terrible because it really hits the people who can't afford it the most. I mean, those people who were, before all this happened, who were already just barely making ends meet, those ends aren't being met now. And you talk about people who are on fixed incomes, retirees, people like that. They're in for a hard time.
I mean, it was interesting. So Shaylee, my wife, and I just went to the grocery store, and a couple years ago, we would be able to fill up a whole cart, about $100, a little bit more, maybe $150, and it would be completely full to the top. We just went a couple days ago and spent a little over $120, and we got maybe it was less than a third of the cart was full.
Yeah,
and it's changed that much that quickly.
Oh yeah, and it's always in the places where, those essentials, your gas, your energy, your groceries, the things you need to just survive. These are not, it's not like Lexus prices or Tesla prices are going up. This is like the stuff that people need to survive, and that's why the people who are most vulnerable to it are going to be feeling the pinch the hardest.
Yeah, it's just been rough, honestly, and it's hitting all of us all over. God can only help us with what's going to happen, and I'm not even much of a religious person, but at this point, it does look like things are going to get real bad real quickly.
Right. And I
So
mean, the good thing, I mean, you have to really want to see it.
yeah,
The silver lining is that these types of times are what generate um, changes.
yeah,
A lot of times, changes do not happen until people get uncomfortable enough to say, "Hey, this really isn't working out. We got to change the way that we're doing things," and that might be part of what comes out of this. That's at least what I'm going to be advocating for, and I know that you and I and the Libertarian Party and all that we're going to be fighting for is what this looks like coming out of this, and let's make sure that we diagnose correctly the problems that are leading to the problems, the things that led to the problems that we're experiencing today, so that we don't repeat them.
yeah, most definitely. I think the liberal world order, as it's now being referred to, as I'm not even sure who that gentleman on the news was that ended up saying that we all have to sacrifice our gas prices and our food prices and everything for the liberal world order. I wish I had that pulled up, because man, that was a shocking video clip.
Yeah.
However, I'm pretty sure their propaganda is breaking down. Is what it seems like. A lot of people are very unhappy. We've just seen Sri Lanka basically overthrow their government over there. Not that I'm advocating for that, YouTube. Not at all. Stay peaceful,
No.
everyone. However, you got the Dutch protesters who are fed up, and the anyone who doesn't know the Danish, Finnish, I don't know, the Scandinavian government over there is telling farmers that they have to eliminate carbon, their carbon footprint and their ammonium footprint.
Nitrogen. Yeah.
Yeah, nitrogen. That's right.
Nitrogen.
And
yeah.
And so that basically kills all farming, right there.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of people don't know it, but the Netherlands is the largest agricultural exporter. Next to the United States, they're the largest exporter of agriculture. And trying to comply with these environmental regulations is really going to put a crimp on how much food they're able to generate. And in a time whenever we just talked about, food prices are already skyrocketing, and we're going to have a global food shortage thanks to the Ukraine and Russia situation. That certainly doesn't help. But you add on to these government policies that are driven by environmental extremists. This is the type of thing that's going to cause, here in the United States, this causes, people, costs, prices go up, and it's a pain in the ass, and you have to deal with it. But there are places in the world where this is going to mean hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people starve to death.
Yeah.
And die of malnutrition, die of diseases because they're malnourished. This is a really huge humanitarian crisis that's brewing. And yeah, with Sri Lanka, I agree. I mean, going about it that way is not the right way to do it. But I think it shows that you can only push people so far. And whenever they start, you talk about, what was that? The pyramid of needs. What was it? Maslow's pyramid of, the pyramid of needs. And whenever that base, you start eating away at that base, and people can't find food and they can't find the things that they need to survive, things can get really ugly really quick. And that's, I hate to say it, but I don't think it's going to be limited to just Sri Lanka. I think we're going to see that in other parts of the world. I hope we don't see it here. We should not see it here, because I don't think we're not close to suffering on that level. But I mean, governments really need to be paying attention and understand they can only push these people so far.
Exactly. So, one thing I think that, and we'll switch gears here a little bit. One thing the reason why I think that a lot of this is collapsing is because of the analogy with the boiling frogs. And it seems as though these so-called elites, I honestly want to change the verbiage on that. I want to stop calling them elites because they're not. They're just like everyone else.
Sure.
And I don't want to place that. I don't want to put that out in the universe. I don't want to put that energy out there to them anymore because they're not elites. They're just like everyone else. However, these people who make these decisions, they turned up the water too quickly. And we got too hot too quickly, and now we're all jumping out. And honestly, I am very thankful for that I think a lot more people are aware than ever before. And I think a lot of that is at the school level. And I know one thing that you're running on is school choice. So let's start at the start of it for you. You and your wife homeschool, and do you want to kind of explain that and what led you guys to that, and kind of go through that process?
Yeah, sure. So we started homeschooling probably about 7 or 8 years ago, and so we've come a long way. When we first started, my oldest son was in first grade here at the public school, and we were meeting with his teacher quite a bit. We had some concerns. A lot of his, he was having a hard time like catching on reading, and it was something that it was just alien to me. I wasn't sure how to handle it because it was, reading was something that like came very, very quickly and naturally to me. And I was like really concerned. I went, okay, how's the best way that we can get him help and get him, back on track to where he needs to be. And so we worked a lot with the counselor and the principal there, and they were really focused on his behavior. And because he was falling behind academically, and because he wasn't keeping up with the rest of the class, that was starting to have ramifications behavior-wise. He wasn't paying attention as much, and I was more than willing to work. My wife and I were more than willing to work with them, and we went in and said, "Look, we will work on the behavior stuff, but really, we think the core problem is, he's having difficulty not only with reading but also with math, and we'd like to get him, tested, see what's going on." So he went through a number of tests, and they came up with a program that they wanted for him. They said, "Well, we're going to put him in special education." I was like, "Well, there's a certain stigma that goes along with that. It's wrong, and it shouldn't be there, but there is. What are going to be the goals? I wanted to know what are going to be the goals for him to, kind of rejoin and be part of the normal curriculum again. What do we need to do to catch him up?" And they said, "Well, no, this is all going to be about behavior." And okay, well, I understand that behavior is a problem, and we've been working on that. But really, I'm worried about the academics. And they said, "Well, we'll work on the academics as well, but we'd like him to join this class of it's basically how to make friends." Now, my oldest son was quite outgoing. He's a teenager now, and he's kind of going through that awkward teenager phase. But whenever he was younger, I mean, we would show up at a playground, and I would, we'd just be kind of hanging out there, and he'd go off and do his own thing. I'd see him playing with these kids, and after it's over, I'd say, "Hey, who are those kids?" He was like, "Oh, I don't know." I was like, "Oh, you don't go to school with them?" "No, I just spent them today." He didn't have a problem making friends. The kid made friends faster than I ever could, and so I was convinced that's not really the problem. The root problem was the difficulties he was having both in reading and in math. They just didn't want to hear it, and they eventually said, there was a key phrase, and I don't remember how it came about, but eventually the principal told me, "Our number one goal is compliance." And I was like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
You mean your number one goal isn't education? I mean, you're a school. And she's like, well, yes, but we have to have compliance in order to properly educate. And
We have to feed it into them.
and I was like, okay, well, that's basically the end of the story between my kids and public school from now on. So I remember my wife and I got in the car and said, okay, we're homeschooling. Um, she was not quite ready for it. I mean, a lot of the onus was going to fall on her. Um, but she really stepped up. It's super intimidating. It is super intimidating, and it's something that's not for everybody. I get it, but it has been the best decision that we've ever made for our kids. My son is ahead now. My oldest son is now ahead in math. He's ahead of where I was when I was in math. My school career when I was going into high school. He's ahead of where I was. He is reading on grade level, beyond grade level now. And so, yeah, I mean, it's all worked out. I mean, we put the focus where it needed to be, and we were able to tailor for all three of my sons. We were able to tailor the curriculum that best met their gifts and their challenges, and it's worked out really, really well for all of us.
Yeah, that's really great. So it's really interesting. I know I had a terrible experience in public school. I know several of my friends all had terrible times, and most everyone graduated. That wasn't necessarily the issue. Some didn't. Some were very close, but it's the gambit across all directions. However, it was just the experience. Most people aren't actually educated in the school. You can typically see things like Jay Leno used to do this. He would do the man on the street interviews and would ask people simple questions. There's tons of commentators that do that now. We actually look forward to doing that in the future. But you would ask just simple questions, geography questions, not even math questions, just
Right.
simple questions. Most people can't answer them, and it's like, you graduated though. Like,
Sure.
none of this makes sense. And I think you being told that it's about obedience more is very telling of the education system. So with school choice, what really is the platform? Because I know a lot of people hear, the libertarian or just the non-traditional way of schooling, and they get freaked out because of the public school, like it's going to cost so much and all of. So really, what does the platform itself entail?
Well, I think the platform is really about allowing parents and students to find the educational environment that's going to fit best for them. As I mentioned, I have three sons. A lot of people say they are spitting images of each other, but I can tell you the way that we approach each of their education is quite different. They have different interests, they have different strengths, they have different areas where they need help, and we have been blessed in that we've been able to afford to homeschool. It is a financial sacrifice you have to make. We have found programs that help with that, obviously, but homeschool isn't for everyone, and I freely concede that. But I do think that school choice, because homeschool is really just it's part of the educational buffet, if you will, that should be available for parents. And that is, really just going through and finding out what your kids need, and how they're going to best learn, because every kid's different, and having the tax money that is collected from people to go towards education, having it follow the student rather than going automatically to a school based on geography. So in other words, you're funding you're funding students' education rather than funding an institution.
Yeah.
What this does is it creates competition. It creates a market, and in competition, different providers have to compete, and they have to compete on multiple levels. They have to compete to have the best outcomes for the kids that are in their school, so that they can attract customers. But they also have to attract talent, that is the teachers. That puts teachers in the driver's seat when it comes to things like salary negotiations and benefits and things like that. So, whereas right now there is one consumer, there is one buyer of teacher talent, and that is the state. In school choice, there would be dozens.
Yeah.
And they would each have to bid up. In order to get the best, most talented teachers, they would have to bid up those, the compensation that they're offering. So this would be a win for teachers. It would be a win for students. It would not be a win for professional, like permanent school administrators. That's where most of the school dollars, when you see how much money, Utah or the United States or any other state spends per student, most of that money is going into the administration building, not into the classroom. That's the exact opposite of what we need. And the incentives would align. If you introduce some competition, the incentives would naturally be, we need to sink more money into the classroom, because that is how we differentiate ourselves from our competition, and we can attract more customers.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the lie that we've been told, and I mean, as a student, I heard this as well, was, the property taxes and everything, that's for the schools. And that's a lie. It's for the student, period.
Right.
If the school wants money, it should have a right to be able to fundraise or do whatever it needs to. And I mean, there's a way to be able to fund that. This is so incredibly important. You can't tell me that people wouldn't willingly give for something as important as this.
Sure.
And it would be nice to be able to have more of our money, getting rid of some unnecessary expenditures or failed government programs, to be able to come in and actually take that money, make the choice with it, and be able to, give it to the school because you believe so highly in whatever you choose for your children.
Right.
And we were actually talking about this yesterday, is that this seems to be the civil rights issue of our time period. There was a lot of terrible things that happen in public schools. I have heard horror stories all across the country of just the experience. I was reading something, this was a few weeks ago, but it was on average, there's about 10,000 children sexually abused in public schools each year in the United States. So that works out to be, roughly a little over 100 kids per state per year. That is insane.
It is. And people, whenever you talk about like allowing, particularly homeschool, is where they'll focus in on. They're like, oh no, one of the functions of public school is that it gets children out of the house. So if they're in abusive homes, it gives them another place that they can go where people can notice, oh, little Tommy's showing up and he has a black eye again. What's going on in his home? And that can be a way to kind of identify where abuse is happening. The fact is that abuse happens in public schools as well. Abusive parents exist. Abusive and neglectful parents exist. That is absolutely true. I won't hide from that. But the fact is that abusive teachers exist. Abusive staff at public schools exist. And in fact, a lot of abusive people, a lot of predators are attracted to those types of positions where they'll have the opportunity to prey upon kids. And again, that's something that if you introduce the right incentives into the market and say you got to compete, there's more incentives for each institution, each educational institution to better vet their people and to really dig in deep and have very clear controls and policies to prevent those types of things from happening.
Yeah, I agree. So, for anyone who doesn't know, I had actually pulled up a list of 5 different types of, or the 5 most popular types of school choice programs that people advocate for. And they are as follows: is the education savings accounts, school vouchers, tax credit ESAs or education savings accounts, tax credit scholarships, and individual tax credits and deductions. The whole goal behind basically all of these is just that the money will follow the student. Would you agree
Sure.
with that?
Yeah. They're all. I think they're all better than what we have now. I think some are probably better than others, but I think allowing parents and students to avail themselves of these different options and figure out what works best. And I don't think it should be a central thing. I don't think it should be something that's decided at the federal level. Let every state do it. Allow us to have 50 different laboratories where we figure out what works best. And
Yeah.
but the best idea will win out, and then other states will start to emulate those same policies and hopefully the same results.
So Arizona right now actually is the leader in school choice.
Huge.
So they just signed a bill into law where the money actually follows the student now, which is the craziest thing I've ever heard of. All of our money actually going to educate a student. Wow.
Right. Yeah, it's mind blowing, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I think Utah should really focus on what Arizona is doing as far as that, to see how it works, and we need to be implementing something like that up here, which is what would most likely happen with a candidate like you winning office.
Yeah, hopefully. I think we need some turnover at the governor position as well. But the fact is that when Governor Cox came out and basically stabbed Utah parents in the back by basically saying he was going to veto a school choice bill that had something on the order of like 75-80% approval among Utah parents. Nobody in the legislature fought him on it. Honestly, what should have happened is that the legislature, as the duly appointed representatives of the people, should have passed it anyway, and then overridden his vote. But I think what happened is you had a lot of, I hate the term rhino, but you had a lot of Republicans who did not truly believe in school choice. The governor was giving them cover to back out, and they took it. And that's not the type of leadership we need in Utah. We need people who are going to stand up for our kids, who are going to stand up for our parents, and represent the clearly expressed will of their constituency. That is what our Republican, small r Republican government system is all about.
Yeah, and that's what confuses me about any Republican who is now watching this in the future or right now. I don't see too many of my fans being hardcore Republicans, but you never know. There's a lot of, I hear Republicans complaining more about the Republican Party now more than I think I ever have. And I understand a lot of Republicans are definitely worried about the other team getting in and wielding that power against them. But you're still voting for people who are not representing you. So all you're doing is shooting yourself in the foot.
Right.
That's it. So right. I don't see the benefit of any of these people actually voting just because they say they're Republican, like Governor Cox, who has turned out to do very little from what the Republican Party supposedly supports.
Right. And we kind of mentioned this in our talk yesterday too. Is that the term rhino? I mentioned I hate it, and one of the reasons I hate it is that is that what does it even mean these days? I think people like Rand Paul or Congressman Massey, for example. I think those guys are really the rhinos now, because they're the outsiders inside their own party, and the Republican Party is run by these Stuart Adams, Cox type of guys, O'Connell, or McConnell, all these what we used to call rhinos. They're in control of the party now, and
Hmm.
I don't see them relinquishing it at all. They're very happy to be the the middle of the road party. Um,
Yeah.
they're not going to fight for anything in terms of foundational principles. They don't have foundational principles. They are just a reactionary party, and what they're reacting against, as far as like the far left agenda, sure, I can get on board with reacting against it. But whenever you're not doing it from a principled point of view, you don't have those foundational principles. It's just not going to be reliable, and that's what we've seen with the Republican Party here in Utah.
Yeah, and I think across the country as well.
Sure, yeah,
You know, it's just really interesting watching a lot of these people say that they care about these things, and then they end up voting for somebody who doesn't support that.
right,
I don't get it.
right,
Um, Anyone watching this, the Libertarian Party aligns a lot more with what I hear people talking about,
yeah,
and
exactly,
that's from both sides of the aisle too.
right,
So
right. I think what you'll find with libertarians is that we're better than the right, than the things that the right are good on, and we're better than the left than the things that the left are good on. I mean, you want to talk about anti-war? We are more anti-war than any possible than any Democrat that's out there these days, any mainstream Democrat anyway. You want to talk about school choice? We're more school choice than either of the sides. You want to talk about Second Amendment? Uh, we don't want to just stop, uh, further gun control legislation. We want to roll back gun control legislation that's been in place for years, for decades. We want to restore your gun rights, and it's that way across the board. You want to talk about criminal justice reform? I don't think you'll find a single libertarian who is less dedicated to that than any mainstream Democrat that you can find. And so I
yeah,
think
seriously,
the
no
change that
knock warrants, civil
right,
asset forfeiture, qualified
exactly,
immunity, they
yep,
all need to be abolished.
right, right, and even down to, as we were talking about as well, is even at the legislative level, just let's
Yeah,
start repealing laws that put people in jail for things that don't hurt anybody, or only hurt themselves.
yeah,
I truly believe that the only laws there really need to be are against only criminal laws there need to be are against violence, and against property crimes like theft or destruction of property, or even fraud, that
yeah.
kind of stuff. Other than that, is there anything else that people should be punished by the state for? And I have a hard time coming up with anything.
I don't know. I mean, I just did an episode not of another live stream not too long ago about hate speech, and there's still people out there that believe in that. You know,
Yeah,
these people who believe that just because I upset you, that means I should be in legal and judicial hell, basically. I should
yeah,
be possibly taken away from my family and my loved ones, all my friends, just because I said something that you don't like.
right,
Even though Thurgood Marshall, our first black Supreme Court justice, read a history book, people, um, actually defended the rights of a very stone cold racist person named Clive, or Clarence Brandenburg. And it was Brandenburg v. Ohio, which is where
mm,
they set the precedent of what incitement is.
Right.
For anyone who doesn't read, it's also it has to include a direct crime that will happen immediately, and that you are
Right.
calling for that. So guess what? That whole you can't say fire in a crowded theater. Actually, yeah, you can.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're not calling. You're not like saying like, "Hey, everybody, let's all storm out of the theater and trample each other and kill each other." You're not calling for that. You're just saying fire. Now that's incorrect, and we can talk about like there's differences between what should be legal and what is moral
yeah,
and what is wise, but yeah, the yelling fire in a theater, that is often miscited. That is actually um, cited as an example of what you can do. That is free speech. It is that would not be popular. That is a you could say it's a bad thing to do. You shouldn't do
hmm
it, but it should be legally protected. You can
yeah,
do that.
yeah. Just like with ignorant, bigoted people.
Right.
Um, I have every right to make fun of those people, and I also want to know who those people are,
Yeah. Same.
and so they should have every right to speak their bigoted hate speech against whatever group they want to speak it about, and then I can point and make fun of them and chastise them for having such an outdated belief system.
Right. There are natural consequences in a moral society, and how moral our society is. I guess you can decide that for yourself. But I do think that in this day and age, there is no doubt that people who espouse uh, racist views, they're not going to be very popular. And if we are outing those people and showing everyone, hey, this is what this person says, this is what this person believes, there are natural consequences, and they're not advantageous to that person at all. I mean, even back in the day of the Ku Klux Klan, there's a reason why they wore hoods over their heads.
Yeah,
It's not because they were proud of what they were doing or thought that it was by any means going to make them popular. No,
yeah,
they had to hide who they were.
yeah.
For
Even amongst other racists.
even amongst other races, exactly.
Yeah. So, what are some of the other issues that you are running on for your campaign?
Well, I think one of my big things is the DABS, and that's the Department of Alcoholic Beverage Service. It used to be DABC. They call it. They did me a favor and renamed it the DABS, so I can say, yeah, that's right. BS is the exact right term. And essentially,
hmm
what this is it's the government, the state government of Utah, that runs a monopoly liquor retail service. So there are no liquor stores in Utah other than the ones that are state owned and operated. This is it's a monopoly, and everyone. I mean, even in public schools, we're taught how bad monopolies are for uh, for for consumers, and that is nowhere more the case than whenever it's a government operated monopoly. Um, it leads to less choice. It leads to higher prices. Um, it leads to for people who have a religious or moral objection to the sale or consumption of alcohol, it forces them, just by the fact of them being a taxpayer, it forces them to participate in the sale of alcohol. They're complicit in it now. I think no. Let's let the free market reign, and let's get the government out of that business once and for all. Other things are going to be like taxes. I think I originally come from Texas, where we had no state income tax, and when I got here, I was like, "What the hell is this? You're taking more of my money?" Um, and so, yeah, I think we need to get rid of that or lower it you know as much as we possibly can. Preferably, just get rid of it. Um, yeah, I think those are some of the things. I mean, I think um, I don't have a great answer for it, but as far as like what's happening with the Great Salt Lake, I think we see um, years of mismanagement of water rights. That's kind of turning its head um, on us. But I think, yeah, school choice is really my big one. I'm also a big proponent of defend the guard legislation,
Yes.
which would require the governor to not deploy the Utah National Guard to a war zone unless an official declaration of war had been passed by Congress. This puts the power of declaring war back into the legislature's hand, which is where it constitutionally belongs. That hasn't happened since World War II, and I mean, a lot of people would argue that was probably the last war that we should have been in, if we should have even been in that.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are some of the big things. Criminal justice reform is really big for me. I graduated with a bachelor's in criminal justice. That's where a lot of my background and training is, and I've seen a lot of the abuses firsthand, from top to bottom, all the way from legislation through law enforcement, through corrections. I mean, we need a lot of work. We have fallen from where we should be in terms of providing actual justice, not only for the accused, but also many times for the victims of crimes. What they're getting in our court system today is not justice. It is it's fodder, basically fed up to a criminal justice machine that is not based on what's best for us or protecting civil society.
Yeah, I love how it's a lot of what is it, rehabilitation with the criminal or with the penal system, and no smirks anybody saying penal system. It's not funny. But they really just create more criminals or better criminals.
Right.
I don't understand how this benefits society at all, because obviously there's some people out there that do bad things that probably should not be a part of society. I get that.
Yeah.
And we have to come up with some solution to make sure that these people are taken care of. You know, get them out of society because they have chosen to not be a part of the peaceful, ever-growing, improving society. I get that.
Right.
I think that's one thing we both know that libertarians get a lot. Is like, oh, you just want drug addicts everywhere. You just want criminals running around with fully automatic weapons, and
right.
Those people exist no matter what.
Yeah. The fact is there's a small, very small percentage of the population that is truly just irredeemably evil, and any society, whether it be, Ancapistan or the progressive utopia, they're going to have to deal with those people. We're going to have to deal with those people. But the thing is that are we going to, I perfectly agree with you. When you have people who commit violent crimes against other people, I'm like, yeah, let's if we need to put them in a cage or put them, somewhere where they're isolated away from the rest of society, let's do it. When you talk about people who commit property crimes, that's where I kind of say, well, I know I've seen lots of times where victims of property crimes, people who got, money stolen from them or their property was destroyed or damaged, they don't necessarily want the person going to prison. I mean, that in a kind of like they wronged me and I want them to suffer. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times those people are like, I want my money back. I want to be made whole. Well, you don't get made whole when somebody's in prison. They're not making any money. They can't repay you while they're sitting in a prison cell. Yeah. Now they make the government money, and if it's a private prison, they make the that private prison company's money, but they're not making any money that goes back towards the original victim of their crime. And I think a much better thing to do would be to have them, it becomes a debt. And if we have, if wages have to be garnished to repay that debt, that's, those are things that we can work out. But I think the first and foremost, what needs to happen is those victims need to be made whole. And I don't think prison is going to be the quickest or best way to make that happen. And then as far as like any crimes where there are no victims, they shouldn't be crimes. We should just repeal those laws and then let anybody who was sitting in prison only because they committed those things, those people need to be set free.
Yeah. I mean, those are social issues at that point.
Right.
Those aren't criminal issues. They're not political issues. They're social issues. And society itself has to deal with it. Making the police deal with it is just a scapegoat. You're just sweeping it under the rug.
Right.
And they don't go away. It's like the whole drug issue. Obviously, we don't want people out there using drugs. Well, most people don't. Most people feel that it's an immoral thing to do, that it doesn't lead to a better life. And, I'll hear arguments from libertarians. It's like, what about the weed? And it's like, calm down. I'm not talking about you. If that's what you choose to do, whatever. But just don't bring it around kids and don't force anyone else to do it. And whatever. Keep doing what you do. It's all about you, boo. Just keep it going.
Yeah.
It's a social issue.
Yeah, you were mentioning earlier, like, people think that we just want drug addicts everywhere. No, absolutely not. I don't abuse drugs. I certainly am instructing my children not to abuse drugs and what the risks are of doing those types of things. I've had family members and friends who have had their lives, in many cases, ended because of abuse of drugs. I don't want that. I just don't think that throwing people into a cage with murderers and rapists in any way helps anything. It does not help the person who is addicted to drugs or abusing drugs. It does not help the family of those people. You're ripping families apart by doing this. You're creating broken homes. It doesn't help anybody. It only destroys, and that's what I'm against. And honestly, it doesn't help our budget either. The amount of money that we spend on the war on drugs is just astronomical, and for a fraction of that, we could provide rehabilitation. And honestly, I think in a lot of cases, whenever you have people who are abusing or becoming addicted, there are underlying issues that need to be treated. It's a mental. There's a mental health crisis that's going on, and there's a lot of times what's happening is they're self-medicating.
Yeah, depression, anxiety are two of the biggest issues that go either undiagnosed or untreated in this country. And it affects everyone. It doesn't matter your age, your sex, the color of your skin, the amount of melanin in your skin. It doesn't matter. It affects everybody. It doesn't matter where you're born, nothing. If you're alive, you run the risk of being affected by depression and or anxiety. And feels a lot better when you don't have to deal with it for a few hours instead of attempting to go through all of this red tape to try and get mental health help, which is ungodly difficult in this country. And then the help that you do get is subpar, if it's just not downright bad. And so, of course, we've got a bunch of people that use drugs. Makes sense.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, for a fraction of what we're spending to throw these people into cages with murderers and rapists, we could be trying to treat the problem at the source. And I mean, we've got a lot of veterans who've been in combat, and they're suffering from PTSD, and they are a lot of them are self-medicating. We
Yep.
have other people, and like you said, it's not limited to just veterans. It's everybody can be affected, and probably will be at one point or other be affected by depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
I have family members as well. I've had bouts of depression. It
Yeah,
happens,
me too.
and so and it's and yeah, and it's one of those things where I'm able to recognize whenever I'm having depression, and that's whenever I like really say, you know what, a beer sounds really good, but I just don't think I'm going to go there today. I think I'm just
Yeah.
gonna take it easy for a while until I'm starting to feel better. And but that's that kind of thing is not easy, and it sure would be easier. It sure would be easier just to down a few beers and kind of drown it out. Um, but that's not the right thing for me. And I think if we could get in a situation where we're treating those types of things up front and actually attacking the root problem, I think we'll be a much healthier society for it.
Yeah. Well, and it kind of cycles back into the criminal justice reform as well, because that kind of allows us to steal the black market back from the criminals who have
Right.
who have become more and more militaristic over the decades, which has led the police to be more and more militarized as well.
Right.
Led to a whole lot of no-knock warrants, which ends bad for everybody. Well,
Yep.
in almost any situation, it's like, oh, well, we came in, shot your dog, shot your husband, and we realize it's the wrong address.
Yeah.
And we're also not going to get in trouble for it, and you're screwed, and we're not going to help pay for the funeral. Don't call us again.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, like it's really ugly, and you don't have to go that far to find a story like that.
No.
As I say this, somebody has, or almost anyone watching this or listening to this has a story in their head already.
Oh,
You
sure.
know, or know somebody personally that's gone through something similar.
Yeah.
And we're putting these people who already have a high burden of protecting society in many ways from some of society's worst people, and they see the worst things every day, and they already have this huge weight on their shoulders for a job.
Yep.
And now we're asking them to go after people who are sick.
Yeah.
That's incredibly immoral.
Hmm.
And I can't believe we're doing that to them. I can't believe we're doing it to the victims of this. This is not the way of a healthy moral society, and there's got to be a better way doing it. We just passed, I think it was 65 years or something just recently with the war on drugs, 66 years, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And, thanks to Nixon, Republican president, by the way,
Hmm.
who has destroyed more families than almost any other policy in our lifetimes. And I think it's about time we got rid of that and started focusing on better ways to be able to take care of this in society.
Yeah. I mean, I often make the comparison of prohibition in the 1920s, and you look at what were the goals of prohibition, and what have been the goals of drug prohibition. Well, the goals were to have less people abusing alcohol or drugs, depending on which one policy you're talking about. The goal was to not have them be not have either drugs or alcohol be as dangerous, not have and basically to deny criminals a revenue source. On all of those goals have just been utter disasters, failures. It's Drug cartels are more powerful now than they ever have been, and because they have the market cornered on something that is in demand. The same thing happened back in Prohibition. I mean, the reason why the mafia became as powerful as it was is because they had the market cornered on a banned product. that there was still demand for.
Yeah.
As far as like drugs and alcohol not being as powerful, we saw this happen in Prohibition, where beer eventually led to whiskey, which then led to moonshine. They wanted more and more potent alcohol that could be transported easier because it was illegal, and you had to be able to transport enough of it in a way that was concealable. And what we see with drugs has followed a very similar path, where the drugs that people are abusing are getting more and more potent and more dangerous.
Now we have fentanyl when we started off with heroin.
Right, exactly. And so as the government clamps down on each of these, what happens is that the potency and the danger of the products that are being abused just go up, and the fatalities and the casualties of that by itself, that has to be figured into the cost of the war on drugs. It's you look at all these different places. I mean, whenever you have a black market, the only way, if we're rival drug dealers and you steal a shipment of my cocaine, for example, I can't go to the police and say, "Hey, Jacob stole from me." They'll just put me in jail for being a drug dealer.
Yeah.
So the only recourse I have is violence, is to go and try to kill as much of your gang before your gang kills mine.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of cycle of violence that, I mean, we're by deciding, no, we're not going to allow certain plants to be ingested or even possessed by people. That's the trade-off. Is we're going to empower criminal organizations. We're going to incentivize them to use the politics of violence to settle grievances between each other. We're going to accept that our kids and people who get involved with drugs are going to be ingesting more and more powerful drugs. I mean, these are all the trade-offs that we're making, and what have we gotten out of it?
And as we know, criminals follow laws so well.
Right.
All of these gangbangers are definitely going to turn their guns in once more gun legislation is enacted. Because they do that so well all the time.
Right. I mean, a person who has decided, I'm going to go kill somebody, I'm going to break the law, like probably the most foundational law that there is, like the easy, even in Ancapistan, there would be laws against murder.
Yeah.
But someone who has chosen to break that law is going to suddenly say, oh, wait, well, I can't carry a gun in this place, so I guess I'll have to figure out something else to do. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. So I think we're going to start wrapping up here. But one thing I did want to end on, just for anyone watching that's made it to this point, thank you very much. It's been wonderful. But one thing I want to bring up, we're actually both running for office. I'm running for state house here in the state of Utah for District 9. And one thing I've been trying to push as well, and I think it would be great for all politicians, regardless of parties, is sunset clauses.
Yeah.
There's a lot of issues, and I think this is very practical. I believe it to be nonpartisan. There's two things with each bill or program that's been passed, and it's either reached its point, it's fulfilled its purpose, at which point it needs to be disbanded and done away with, or it hasn't reached its purpose and therefore is failing and costing us money and needs to be ended. So that's something that I think is very doable within our state, within our country, our counties, that should really be looked at and promoted by a lot of people. So how do you feel about the sunset clauses?
Oh, I'm all on board for that. I totally agree that we have so much legislation out there that, I mean, has not achieved its purpose, has not achieved its goal. We just talked about like the war on drugs. But there's so many other examples as well, where just the intent hasn't been met, and the goals have not been met. And so, yeah, there comes a point where you need to either cut bait or realize, yeah, we've already caught the fish. To complete the analogy, where, yeah, and I would even say, I would even go a step further. I mean, this might not be your position, but I would say that a constitutional convention every 24 years is probably what we should be doing. I did not sign on to the Constitution. Nobody I voted for was at the Constitutional Convention. So maybe what we need to do is once a generation have a constitutional convention where we go in and we figure out, is this still the same compact that we want to have? And states can decide, nah, I really don't want to be part of this anymore. Or maybe these 5 states decide, we're going to make our own thing. And another, 6 states say, you know what, we'll do our own thing. Just because our values have changed so much, that there comes a point at which we have to say, is the Constitution itself one of those pieces of, it's not legislation, but it's one of those documents that, is it really serving the purpose that it was intended to?
A peaceful national divorce.
Right. Yeah. Peaceful. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's even something I would go along with. But I think definitely, as far as like legislation goes, it needs to be sunsetted. There needs to be a clause in every law that's passed that says, on this date, no more than 5-6 years from the date of passage. If these, I think another thing we could do is say, every law. This would be hard to put into words and make happen, but there needs to be like metrics. Like, how are we going to know if we're successful? Let's define success and say, once we have met these metrics, this will be, this law will be repealed. Or if we fail to meet these metrics, this law will be repealed. Now that invites a lot of cheating and a lot of, okay, let's go back to the education thing. Let's teach to the test to make sure that we hit the metrics we want. So there's got to be some governance in there for that. But yeah, I think it's too easy just to pass a law and then have it be on the books for generations.
For 100 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking at you, Federal Reserve Act.
Exactly.
So let everyone know where they can find you, where they can donate a few $100 or whatever they got. I know things are tight for everybody, but we need all the help that we can get. Yeah, I appreciate that. My campaign website's at www.adamfeller.org. All right. And then on Twitter, I run the Davis County Libertarian Party's Twitter account, and so I can, you can reach me there. Yeah, I think those are it. All right, let's see here. So there's his website right there. I'll make sure and put it in the episode description. And for anyone else, thank you so much for making it this point in the live stream. We'll definitely get Adam back on. I always love having him on. Definitely a good friend, and if you get a chance, go over, donate a few bucks to him. And like I said, I'm running as well. Unfortunately, don't have a website up yet, but there are several places that you can find to donate. You can find me on Twitter at Jacob for Utah. You can find links anywhere, or just get a hold of me, shoot me a message on here, just comment somewhere, and I'll make sure you can donate to any of the 18 Libertarians running across the state of Utah this year. It's time Utah had a change, and the Republicans have had their chance. They've done some good things, but they've also done a lot of bad. And they need to pass the reins over a little bit. So It doesn't mean
your
that they
target
have to
meeting.
give up everything all at once, but
Right.
we are coming for you. So,
Yep.
um,
Absolutely.
just so everyone knows, I have another live stream tomorrow. I have Doc Dixon on, starting at 12 noon Mountain Standard Time or 2 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be a lot of fun. He was a Libertarian magician who was able to fool Penn and Teller. So,
That's awesome.
yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to get him on. And, yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. Any parting words, Adam?
No, I think just echoing what you said. I mean, I think the Libertarian Party is staged to have a lot of success and a lot of growth this year. I would encourage people, if you are interested in the values of freedom and individual liberties, check us out. I think we've made a lot of strides. I think the Libertarian Party is in a really good place, and we're ready to strike. And there's no better time to become part of our movement and try to affect real change, to restore some of the liberties that we have lost.
Yeah, and now's the time to do it. Shit or get off the pot.
Exactly.
So, well, cool. Thanks, Adam. And like I said, we'll get you on again. Once again, thanks to all the viewers, listener, for all the blind viewers listening on audio platforms. And until next time, stay free, my friends.